right, it's 2:30, so let me not forget to turn this on, so you should all be able to hear me a little bit better. So I have over 100 slides, so we have a lot to go through. I always like to keep them simplistic, but so if you're here today to learn anything about SaaS or like how to do it like yourself on the side, that's like what this talk is about. So I hope you're in the right room. If not, I hope you still enjoy it. So my name is Eddy Vinck. I'm a senior software engineer from the Netherlands. So I flew all the way over here to give this talk to you, so I really hope you like it. I'm a senior software engineer at a company that's called Front Value. It's a very small consultancy based in the Netherlands, like 11, 12 people right now, so like really small. And I'm what they would call an indie hacker, which is basically what they call people that like build software without venture capital on their own. So first, of course, thanks to all the sponsors for the conference. Without them, we wouldn't be able to be here together. So very heartfelt thanks to them. And I'm also a sponsor, so if you want, come check out my booth after the talk where we can talk more about this SaaS that I'm making called Blog Recorder. I haven't been there much today because I was preparing for this talk, so if you've seen it empty, that's what I was doing. So first, let me just quickly confirm, like, this is not an ad. Like, I'm not here to like this. So Clark didn't tell me like, hey, you can just like sell your product for like an hour long. I'm still here to like give you something that you can, get some takeaways from, which is actually the main objective. So if you're an aspiring developer or already are a developer and you're like interested in building your own products, like you have the urge to just do something yourself, like from A to Z, like the whole story, and you want to like do that without quitting your job and maybe earn some money with it, then this is the right talk to be in, because that's what I did. It's still very new, my product, but that's also good because that means that all the problems that I ran into are all still very fresh as well. So I'll go over how I built my project, what I tried, what kind of mistakes I made and what I would do differently, what kept me up at night, and like the whole experience basically. And at the end, I'll give you all a link for all the resources, so you don't have to you can take notes, but you don't have to copy all the links or all that. I did all of that for you, so you can just enjoy. So, how did I even get the idea to do this thing? Well, I learned at some point that you could actually do software, like build a product and sell it all by yourself. I didn't realize that before I became a software developer that was something that you could do. I always thought, well, there are these big, enormous companies with hundreds of people, and they all work on this one thing, and there's a person responsible for every individual button, and that's how software comes to be, and they sell it for lots of money. It doesn't have to be that way. You can actually do that yourself. So in 2018, I saw this talk on YouTube. It's by this guy called Peter Levels. He goes by Levels.io on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it nowadays. He's also Dutch, and he is probably a multi-millionaire at some point by all the side projects that he had built. And he's very scrappy when it comes to it. So, and he's a bit edgy, so that might not be your vibe, but I saw this talk on YouTube and it really inspired me 6 years ago, and now I finally did it myself. And I'm not a millionaire, maybe I'll never be, but I did build something that I'm proud of, and I want to tell you about how I did it and the lessons that I learned and all that. So there was this really there was a problem 6 years ago, and I was still really junior. I worked at this marketing agency. I built these simple marketing websites, not really applications at all. So I didn't know how I could even accomplish that. It was so distant from what I was doing. So something needed to change. So I decided to put myself in situations where I can grow in these parts that I was still missing. So I quit my job at this marketing agency, and before doing that, I actually started learning about React, for example, with some courses online, all outside of my work because we weren't doing any of that. And I followed this course by Wes Voss. Again, links at the end. You don't have to like take notes. It's great. He has this course. I decided to just skip the beginner one and go straight to the advanced one because why not? And so it's like a full stack course where you do TypeScript on the front end and the back end with React and GraphQL. You build like this e-commerce store. So that was cool. And then I got a job at a startup, which just so happened to be total coincidence, but I was applying for multiple jobs, and one of them happened to be a startup that they made this framework for React with Node.js and GraphQL and TypeScript for e-commerce. So that was, a nice coincidence. So I showed the project that I did in the course during the interview, and they liked that, and they ended up hiring me. So that was cool. Then 2 years later, I was not really interested in the e-commerce domain anymore. I had learned enough at that job. So I went to this full-service web agency that did like many types of back office applications for multiple different companies. So it's like kind of like building a bunch of like mini SaaS for other companies, and that was really cool. Then for that job, I actually negotiated my work hours to be 32 hours a week, so I would have one dedicated day to like start doing my own thing on the side. And I tried doing marketing websites for other companies, and I got my first client. And there was a bit of a problem because, that project was going great, although they shut down their company in the middle of the project, so I never got to finish it. So then after a while, it was like 2 years into the job, I quit, found another job, and I had so much accrued PTO at that point because I had done a lot of overtime, and that was also one of the reasons that I quit. I didn't really like how it was managed there. So I had actually 5 consecutive weeks of time off before my new job, which was great because I was feeling kind of burned out. So I was driving to work for my new job, and I got the idea for my projects actually while driving. So first I had this, I think this is kind of funny, like I had 5 weeks off, and after those 5 weeks I'm pretty much like working all week, and then I have the idea to build something that would have been nice if I had that like 5 weeks earlier, so it would have been maybe finished by then or whatever. But so I'm really interested. So raise your hand. Why do you actually want to build SaaS? Is there like some problem that you have yourself that you would like to solve? Okay. What about learning new things? Cool. Or just for building something cool. That's what I like it. What about money?
Sure.
Yeah. Why not, right? That's a good thing to do. Makes it more sustainable than not earning money, of course. So let's quickly go over how I build my SaaS. So again, it all starts with an idea, and I was driving to work, and I had this idea I didn't have the idea for the SaaS right away. I had this idea for an article that I wanted to write. And of course, I'm driving to work, so I can't just sit there and take out my phone and start writing the article while I'm behind the wheel. That wouldn't be a great idea. So I just made a voice recording, and I decided, I'll transcribe that and then maybe go through something like ChatGPT, which already existed at the time. And I'll just have that summarize it. But then, it's a chat interface, so you can't really continue editing it. So I took that, pasted that into Visual Studio Code because it was Markdown format, and started editing, and then I was able to publish it, which, that works, but there's a lot of manual steps and different tools that you have to glue together, kinda. So that's how I got the idea for my project, because it basically does all of those things, but in one experience where you just record, and then it processes the audio and out comes an article that you can edit within the same application and then export to HTML for rich text editors or Markdown, so you can host it on whatever blogging platform you're currently using. So that's the short version of the pitch. So what do I do now? So I had to have this idea for a project. So of course, I'm gonna start coding right away and buy the domain name right away. Well, as you might have guessed, that's exactly what I did not do. So step one was actually marketing, which is something that people aren't really comfortable with, especially developers, but it's a necessary evil, if you will. So it started with a tweet. This was April 2023, so it's a while ago, but that's like when I started, really. So I posted that, like, hey, I have this idea, I'm gonna build it. If you are interested in something like that, just give me your email address. So I just put up this website on Netlify with just an H1, like audio recordings, turned into real blog posts with AI, give me your email, please. And I didn't even have the domain, so I just hosted it on blogrecorder.netlify.app because I have done this way too many times where I bought a domain name, was excited about a project, didn't finish it, and then I have this domain name that I forget about, but it keeps auto-renewing, and it costs me so much money. And, and ironically, this is the one project that I ended up finishing, and I didn't do it this time, so that's cool. So I'm in this Discord group, and I promised myself, and I also said it to them, like, I will not start building until I have at least like 20 people on my list. And so on the same day, I had 15 subscribers on that list, and I broke the promise already because I started building. I was too excited. Like it was enough for me. Like, okay, there seems to be some interest. I also want to build this for me. Let's go do it. So I started building. About like 4 days or so after announcing the project, I made like the first commit. So of course, as I already mentioned, I didn't quit my job to do this. I actually did it part-time. And I was even doing freelance projects on the side next to the SaaS that I was building. So as you can imagine, that's not ideal. So I was doing this freelance work, and I expected it to be more like this, where I like work for them, ask for feedback, get the feedback, and do some work again. But that wasn't really the case. There was oftentimes, like I have this one dedicated day per week, remember? And oftentimes, like say it's like a Thursday, for example, oftentimes I would get the feedback on like Thursday afternoon or even on Friday. So it's basically like a wasted week, really, because I didn't know what to work on. So, well, I had this idea, and that's when I started building my app. Of course, it was also a great idea to start doing conference speaking at the same time and like getting a new job at a consultancy. Why not? Let's add that all on top as well. So of course, time became a big problem, and how did I solve that? Well, I didn't. Like I said, my client went out of business, so it kind of fixed itself. A bit of an unfortunate turn of events, but I'm trying to look at it from the bright side. So I quickly just want to go over like what kind of progress I made within the 7 months that I had my full 32 hours a week job, my freelance work, and besides that, I was doing Blog Recorder, like starting to work on that on the side. So I just want to quickly show you what I did in that time frame. So I initialized the mono repo, and then I started playing around with OpenAI Whisper, which is their like voice transcription service. That was April 12th, 2023. A few days later, I started working on some UI stuff, like microphone selection, because I had never like done anything like that. So that was cool. Then somebody asked me like, hey, does this even work in Firefox? And I was like, oh no, it doesn't. So I guess I'll have to fix that, because I don't want to have something that just works in Chrome. So a few weeks later, I had some like more UI stuff. It was all like, it wasn't going very fast. Like this is 2 weeks later, and I had like some very ugly UI, but I was able to choose a microphone, like start recording and all that. So that was cool. I was feeling very confident, so I made the big promise on Twitter. I will finish this before Bethesda releases Elder Scrolls 6. And I'm happy to say that that worked out. I don't know when they're gonna finish their stuff, but yeah, April 27, I had audio processing, and it was like being saved to my local web development server. And I had about 40 people on my wait list, which was pretty cool. Sharing these updates on Twitter made some people see the project that I was working on, and they signed up. So that was cool. So I kept just sharing these updates and basically growing my wait list. So May 1st, was playing around with OpenAI Whisper. Got that working within my app now because I was running it locally first, and then I found out, well, actually they have an API for this, so I don't have to go through all the trouble to find out how I can self-host that Python app myself, because I've never done that before. So that was good because let's save some time where we can. So then I was working on this volume indicator and some better UI, even though it still looked terrible, honestly. But so June 3rd comes around, and I had actually recorded the very first article that was then processed into this markdown and then rendered in a markdown view on the page. So that's basically the core of the app, but not quite there yet. So I started doing my audio processing in Lambda because I figured, well, I need to upload my file somewhere, so I'll use S3, and S3 has a nice integration with Lambda, so I'll use that, and it also takes the load off of my main server for the application, so that's cool. So I worked on some new design sketches because I didn't want my app to look that ugly anymore, so I made a mobile first design because the idea was, of course, I want to use this maybe in my car, handheld thing or whatever. So I can record articles while I'm driving or anywhere really. So that having a mobile first thing was really important for me. So then I was actually going to a conference in Berlin with some colleagues, and I was on the train, and they were all having a beer or whatever, and playing card games, and I was working on my app because I like to code too much maybe. So that was how it looked like back then. Not really that great, but I kept sharing these updates. How does it look like? Got some feedback, made some tweaks, and all that. Then I started working on these status updates for audio processing, and then now it's September 23rd. I had an onboarding screen for new users, and it doesn't look like this today, but I just wanted to have something okay, choose a subscription or whatever. Then now the app started becoming more of a real app, because just having the audio processing and displaying the result isn't really that's cool, but it's not really useful to me, at least. So I wanted to have something that you can then use to edit the content in the same application. So there was a lot of work. So now it's October, and I had this rich text editor, so now I could record an article, have it being processed, and then I converted that into this format that worked into this rich text editor, so you have a nice UI to work with, because, well, developers love working with Markdown. I personally don't. Maybe that's a bad thing to say or admit, but I didn't really vibe with that, so I like having the visual, bigger headings and all that. So then I still didn't have a logo. I don't know if you noticed, but the logo for my landing page was literally a microphone emoji. So I was waiting at an airport, and was playing around with DALL-E 3, which was new, and I just generated a bunch of them and asked people which one would you like the most, and they all voted. Most people voted on number 3, so that's what I ended up going with. So then I redesigned a bit. So first I had this recording screen on the left with just a bunch of buttons really, and the new one was on the right. It's this nice microphone SVG, and if you talk in the app, then it makes the SVG highlight based on the volume. It's pretty cool, but maybe unnecessary, but I liked it. So then it was December, so I believe that's 7-ish months after I started building, and I decided, it's time, let's get the domain name. I've waited long enough. I think I'm gonna go through with this thing. So I was fortunate to have, I was the only bid on like a GoDaddy auction for the domain. I don't know why it was being auctioned when clearly no one else was interested in it, but I made the only bid and got it. So then, still December 5th, I updated my homepage, and after all these product updates, I was at about 91 subscribers on my waitlist, so not bad. So after 7 months, to recap, we have audio processing, kind of nice UI, marketing site and the logo, a rich text editor, and options to export to a bunch of popular formats for our other blogging platforms, and more importantly, a wait list of 91 people that seem to be interested in the app. So that's cool. So I definitely cannot like complain about these results considering, you know, the time constraints that I had, but I keep wondering, like, what if I just had more time? Would I just have finished the app already? Maybe I could have done more marketing, get more people on my wait list, but honestly, I can't really complain considering I was doing it next to my job, next to my freelance client, and then the client went away, so I was able to start focusing on my project. But I really learned that, you know, if you're trying to do something like this, it's better to not have too many distractions, because it's just a lot. You don't want to do like all that stuff that I was doing at the same time and trying to build a SaaS on the side. I can't really recommend it. So there are also a bunch of like roadblocks and speed bumps, as I would say, along the way that I want to tell you about. So hosting is a specific one. I moved from like a few different platforms. So where do I host it now? How do I deploy it? Where do I store my data? What if I want multiple environments? So these are all concerns that I had when building my application, because I don't want to like, I don't want to have too many like constraints when hosting my application. I don't want to like go with this one like, you know, specific platform where they like, okay, maybe it's serverless and they have like lambdas and you can like do functions that run for 5 times, and if you want to have longer running functions, then you gotta pay like the $200 plan a month. I don't want to like run into that. I just want to not have that and just like do it myself. So I want to have low cost, high flexibility, no vendor lock-in, and I want it to be extendable. And I know like the common advice for launching something as soon, like it's to launch as soon as possible to see if people like it, and oftentimes that means to reach for like these dozens of services and like tying them together in like a spider web of API calls on a bunch of different free tiers. But honestly, that's more shortcuts than I am personally comfortable with. I don't want to give away too much control, and also given the limited time that I had, I was concerned that, well, if I launch it this way, then I might like lock myself into these tools for a while, because I don't have the time to like go from that to like this whole other setup. I just want to do it that way, right away. So to me, the ideal solution is somewhere in the middle. So it's fine to lean on some services, but I don't feel comfortable using a service for, like I just said, Lambda, that I could just, you know, I'll deploy a Lambda, it's fine, it's not that hard. And I didn't know how to do it before, but I just like figured it out, and that's like saves me hundreds of dollars just because I like was able to like configure a Lambda function, which is, I think that's cool. So, but I do use some services. Like I know that like you cannot do it all, especially if you're doing it all on the side of your job. So I use a service for authentication, and like I don't want to worry about that personally. Now you might think that's like super simple, and you know you can roll your own out. That's all cool. I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to store user passwords in my database. I don't want to. I've seen and spoken all the like security concerns for authentication, and I just don't want to deal with it. So I decided not to do that. But for you, it might be super simple, and you should totally implement it yourself then. But there's also some stuff like email that you might not want to roll yourself. And I'll talk like about my exact tech stack later. But practically speaking, this middle ground to me only becomes possible if I do my own infrastructure as code. So what that means, if you're not familiar, is basically you have these files that have these like blocks of text, like a code file, and they just describe like your infrastructure. So if you have a Lambda function, there's a bit of code that describes the Lambda function. If you have VPS, there's a bit of code that describes that, and like there's some ways to describe the relations between them and share like some environment variables to them. So that's what I did. I also wanted to do that because I wanted to have multiple environments for my application, so a development environment, testing environment, production environment, without going to like the super premium ultra deluxe plan of a specific fancy hosting platform that like charges you way too much money for that, even though it's like, if you have a setup for one environment, then it's not too hard to replicate it for others. And I do that via CI/CD, so I automate my deployments with GitHub Actions. And again, I didn't know how that worked before I started building this. I just figured it out along the way. I copied some stuff that I saw online, started tweaking it until it worked, and then I had a application that was deploying automatically, so I wouldn't be making mistakes when deploying it anymore. And I was able to replicate it for multiple environments quite easily without having to go through like a 30-step document on how to deploy the application, which is nice. But I mean, you could not do that. You know, what's the worst that could happen? I don't know. So yeah, a bit of poking fun there. So lesson learned. I barely knew how to do most of this stuff that I needed to do, and you can learn it. It's not easy if you're doing it for the first time, and it might be scary. Like for me, there's like this mental block of doing these types of stuff. Types of things for the first time, especially like since my background is more like front-end developer, like this is more all back-end kind of stuff. But you know, you need to get through it if you want to build a full-stack app, so I just did it. Another thing to consider is platform risk. This is something that I ran into myself, unfortunately. And it took me quite a few weeks to fix it. So I relied on a specific database platform that I'll not name right now. And they had a really good free tier, and you know, I liked using them. And then all of a sudden, they removed the free tier and decided, you know what, you're gonna pay us if you want to use our platform. And of course, they have every right to do that. I would too if I had an awesome database platform. But the thing is, like, I had this limited time, and all of a sudden I had to like move from one database to the other, and it was a MySQL database, and like I was looking online for like, okay, what are some alternatives? I couldn't really find something that I liked with good pricing, so I saw some options with Postgres, so I started looking into that. So eventually I started hosting my database on DigitalOcean with Postgres, and all of a sudden I had to figure out, well, how do I move my data from MySQL to Postgres? Again, my background was front-end developer, and now all of a sudden I'm like doing cross SQL database migrations. And I don't know, that was interesting. I don't recommend it though. So my lesson here would be to have a backup plan if you're relying on any free service. I mean, we all like free stuff. That's totally cool. But don't be, especially if it's like a VC funded startup that's like offering a good free tier to like get a bunch of people in and then like do a rug pull with the free plan and like, oh, now you have to pay us. Oh no. Well, just be mindful that it can happen, and maybe you have like some backup vendors in mind in case it does happen. So then after losing that client that I had for my freelance blog project, it was time to focus. So I kept building the product for a while, and at some point it was time. I was gonna get my first few users, but I didn't want to like go live right away. So I started an early testing group. Of course, remember, I have this wait list of a bunch of people. I know, like I've talked to a bunch of people that were interested in it. So I just like handpicked a few that seemed the most vocal and interested in the product, and I asked them like, hey, would you like to be part of this early testing group? All I want in return is your feedback and a bit of patience while I like fix all the bugs that you might run into. And just give me your email, I'll put you on a whitelist. You can sign up on this specific URL and you can use it for free for a while. And all I need is like some feedback. So that's great. Now let's go over how I actually ended up launching my product. So before I actually did the actual real launch, I decided, you know what, I want to give the people on the wait list also as a token of gratitude, like the opportunity to try it early with. And I also was still in the back of my mind a little bit afraid that if I were to launch, like other people were going to use my app and it would break or whatever. So I don't know, for some reason I expected like this big boom launch that didn't end up happening, by the way. That's pretty rare. But I had sent out an email to the 175 people on my wait list at that time. 85 of them opened the email and 26 of them ended up clicking the link. And I don't really remember how many of them signed up, but when that happened, I actually made a critical mistake towards my early testing group, because when I flipped the switch to let people give me money for my product, I actually accidentally locked out my early testers, and when they signed into the app, they were faced with this nice pricing page instead of they didn't hear anything from me, so I didn't realize that was the case. And some of them went to the app and they couldn't use it anymore. I don't know, that just feels wrong to me. I should have at least told them if that was my intention. So how did I find that out? Well, fortunately, it wasn't because someone was very angry with me. It was actually, that's how I got my first customer. Well, someone on the early testing group, I remember very clearly. I was going to this conference in Amsterdam. It's called C3 Fest. I got back to my hotel and I saw this notification. Well, hey, Stripe, hey Eddie, you have your first customer. And I was like, huh? I don't understand. I don't think I had emailed the waitlist at this point yet. So I just had flipped the switch and wanted to do that the day after or whatever, the email. And I saw that notification. I was over the moon. What happened? Who is this? Who paid me $140 out of a sudden for this thing that I made all by myself over all this time? So it was mind blowing to me. Someone was happy to pay for this thing that I made. It's still kind of weird, honestly. But I will honestly cherish that moment forever. So I posted that I got my first customer, and I didn't want to use his name too much for my marketing, because he has a big brand. But Ken C. Dodds, you might have seen him earlier today at the big stage. He was actually part of my early testing group, and yeah, like I said, I didn't want to use his name to market, but he was kind enough to say hey, it's me. I was the first customer. I wrote all my recent articles using this tool, and it's very good. And honestly, I saw that, I was oh my god, I didn't even know that he liked it that much. That was crazy to me. So, of course, Ken has written hundreds of blog posts over the years consistently. So this sort of testimonial was huge, and I'm immensely grateful for it. So then I continued with my launch plan. So what did I end up planning? Well, I prepared a LinkedIn post. I reached out to some friends on Twitter, hey, I'm gonna post this. I just gave them a screenshot of the tweet that I would post. Would you be willing to interact with it? Maybe share it around, get some more eyeballs on it, because this is gonna be my big launch, more than a year of working on it. And a bunch of people said yes. So that's cool. I scheduled an email to the wait list. They had gotten their email from the soft launch, of course, already. So I sent another email to to the people that already signed up but hadn't like recorded anything yet for some reason. And I put a launch discount on the website, on the pricing page, and also in the application itself. And I ended up posting the tweet around like dinner time in the Netherlands, so that's like 7 p.m. ish. And I spent the rest of the evening just replying to people's responses. So when I posted my launch tweet, I shared it to a bunch of people. Like, hey, they said that they were interested in helping me promote it, and I posted the tweet and started like going back to them like, hey, here's the link of the tweet, and like after 25 people or so, I got this screen, and that scared the hell out of me. Like, hey, your account is locked all of a sudden. I didn't even continue reading. Like, I just like, oh my god, I froze. Like, oh, this is supposed to be like the big launch, and now I'm locked out of my account. What do I do? And I like took a minute to breathe or whatever, and then I actually read the damn thing, and it said, well, you just need to like pass like this sort of like CAPTCHA challenge, and I did that, and everything was back to normal. But that was like a big scare. So honestly, if you're like planning to do something like that, then maybe just tell them like, hey, check out my profile to see the tweet, so you don't like run into the same thing. I was probably like flagged with my account for spam or whatever. So now we discussed, how did I come up with Blog Recorder? How did I market it? How did I build it? And if you're anything like me, when you're like listening to a talk like this, like I did with the Peter Level's talk, like your mind might be racing with like these ideas for a bunch of different apps that you could build. But if not, let's just go over some ways that you can narrow down your ideas. So, first things first, you do not need to change the world. If you could solve world hunger with your app, that would be very cool, but solving a problem is enough. So solve a problem. And when you have a problem, or like an idea for an app, you should ask yourself, like, what problem does it actually solve? Like, there's this like saying, I believe it's called like vitamin products versus like painkillers or whatever. Like, I don't really know the exact difference, but there's like some nuance to it, right? So ideally, you should be able to like really formulate the problem that you're trying to solve in one sentence. So for my product, I came up with like this definition, like, and that was like based on just me. I actually hate starting from nothing for like a blog post and like going like, I have this idea that I want to talk about, but I like don't know how to structure it. So like when I'm writing it, I'm just continuously moving stuff around, and it just costs me so much energy to like write these first drafts by hand, and it costs me a lot of time. And the second problem that I wanted to solve at the same time was I always have the like ideas for articles at the wrong time, like never when I'm like sitting on a couch with my laptop or whatever. It's always like, oh, I'm driving or in the shower, like, oh yeah, that's great, let me just pull out my laptop or whatever. That's doesn't really work. So solve your own problem if you can, because if you do, then you're your own customer. That's a big hack. Like, you know what you want, instead of like, so think of it like this, like there's like some random product manager somewhere working at like a venture capital funded company, and like he just like applied for the job and got it, and now he's in charge of like taking the founder's vision and like making sure that like it's all done well for the product. That like, but he has to like go through, or he or she has to go talk to this founder a bunch and like make sure that they understand what are we actually doing. But whereas if you're your own like customer, then you understand the problem that you're trying to solve, and you can have like a good vision, and you don't have to like spend a bunch of time on like useless hours of meetings to like, because you just know what you need, so you can like design it and build it, and that's it. Like, there's no need for like all this other stuff. So, and you will also automatically just care more about your app than when you're just copying someone else's idea or implementing it for them. So there's also this other thing, you probably have some sort of unfair advantages. Maybe you don't realize it, but maybe you have experience in specific industries where you've worked in. Like I'm building like this blogging app, and my first 2 years of my career were working at a marketing agency. So of course I have a lot of insights there. Maybe you have something else that like you could turn into a product or like help solve. So, or maybe you have connections to those people still, and you could just hit them up like, hey, I have an idea. Is this actually a problem for you, or like how do you deal with this right now? Like, is it a problem, or how will you solve it now? Like, how much time do you spend on it? Like, you can kind of gauge like, is this a problem that is worth solving? If you're not doing it for yourself, then I would definitely recommend just talking to people like that might become users of your app. The biggest mistake is like just going in like your cave and working on an app for months without talking to anyone, and then you come out of the cave and like, hey, here's my app, and then it's like crickets, like nobody's interested. That's like the worst, and it happens a lot, unfortunately. Another thing that you can do is just jumping onto trends. And here's an example. I saw this guy, I follow him on Twitter as well and on Threads. And his name is Luca, and Meta actually announced that they were gonna release an API for Threads, so you could like automatically post with third-party apps on their platform. And even before that they released the API, Luca, he started building this app, like the whole shell and like the logic of like the posted things. So when they like released the API, it was like, day 1 or 2 or like somewhere in the first week, he had his app launched and he's getting paying customers. So imagine like, you can do that. That's something that you cannot really do in most companies, right? They're like, it's too risky, should we really do it? Like, let's have 1,000 meetings about it before, and then you're like half a year further and there's like 28 other competitors that beat you to it. So, and this is just like a solo developer, and he built this app, and people are paying him for it, and I think that's really cool. Another thing that's really important is keeping it small. So what do I mean by that? Well, of course, if you're a developer, you've probably experienced scope creep in some of your projects. So for Blog Recorder, this is basically all I wanted. I want to have a recording screen, and I wanted to have an editor where I could like edit the result and like export it. And there's a million ideas, like honestly, that I have for this thing that I just cut them for the first release, because there's no point in like making the ultimate, writing application with AI features, and then, I honestly, I think I spent way too much time building before releasing, and doing even more would have taken me even longer. So, for example, I don't have any integrations, to automatically publish on another platform. What I have is just like, okay, you write your stuff, and there's a copy button, like it just copies the content to your clipboard in the format that you choose, and that's it. Like you can just paste it in whatever, and like, bam, that's like the most simple integration that you can think of, and you can like right away like publish to like thousands of Markdown for editors or like platforms. So keep it simple when you can, and of course, if you're doing this thing on the side, then it's important to like not lose all the context of what you're building. So I personally kept track of all my stuff in Notion or like some sort of like issue tracker. It doesn't have to be Jira or like something really complicated. It could just be your notes application if you want, but believe me, just keep track of it some way, because you'll forget a bunch of stuff. And if you're building it on the side, then maybe you're working on it on like a Saturday or like in the evening after work, and then you're not working on it for several days, and you just forget stuff. And I didn't do that in the beginning, and I totally recommend doing it instead, so you don't lose all your valuable ideas or context. So I will be hosting an open space later. I don't know if you've heard about open spaces yet. Otherwise, Clark will definitely tell you about it. The time slot is still to be determined, but just we can like do an open space and just like come talk about like your SaaS ideas if you want. And we can just like start like picking each other's ideas apart or just supporting each other. It could be cool. I don't really have a specific plan for it, but you're welcome to come. It's not on the like board yet, but it will be on there. I'm going pretty fast. I think I'll be within the time this time. That's great. Yeah, I have like 133 slides, so I wasn't quite sure if I was going to make it in time, but it's going quite well. So, validating your ideas. So that could actually be a whole talk by itself, but so I'll just keep this bit short, but there's a bunch of ways to go about it. Like I did a wait list, and that's, the simplest way of validation that you could probably have. It's even better if people give you money, because a lot of people will say that they're interested in your product. Maybe if you talk to them, it's another thing to like actually sign up and give your email away, and giving money for something that doesn't exist yet is even a step further. And that's actually something that a friend of mine did. He works on like a bunch of SaaS. His name is Simon Hoiberg. He's from Denmark, and I believe he lives in Spain now, which I'm really jealous of because they get a lot of sun. But he built this tool, and he just this isn't the exact version when he launched it off the page, but he just told people like, hey, I'm gonna build this thing. I didn't even write any lines of code yet. If you're interested, just give me like, I don't know how much it was. Let's say $150, and if you pay me, you'll have lifetime access, no monthly subscription, and I'm gonna go build it if there's enough interest, and otherwise you'll just get your money back. So if you're confident in your abilities to build something, that's something you could consider. So let's go over some tech stack and tools, because we're all developers here. So this is my tech stack. So there's a bunch of tools here. Like I used GitHub and GitHub Actions, like I mentioned. I am hosting my application on DigitalOcean on managed VPS. I am using Postgres for my database. I have some serverless bits that I run in AWS. The other one with the squares, that's SendGrid. That's what I use for my emails. Stripe, of course, because you need to get paid somehow. There's this thing called PostHog that gives me like product analytics of people using it, so that's kind of nice. Notion, again, for keeping track of stuff. This one in the bottom right is called Turbo Repo, and that's like the tool that I use for my mono repo, because again, you could split multiple things between multiple repositories, or you could just keep it simple, because it's probably not gonna, it shouldn't be that big where you have to like separate all your stuff, at least in my opinion. If you like to work in multi-repo, that's also totally fine. Then there's OpenAI, because, well, I do some AI stuff, so I need some APIs for that. Or you could host your own models, of course. But again, in the interest of keeping it small, not having too much scope creep, just use some other tools. It's cool. Then there's Terraform. That's what I use for my infrastructure as code to deploy my whole application across DigitalOcean and AWS. I use Tailwind CSS for styling because, well, I like it. That's really all there is. I'm able to move fast with it. I build my whole application with React using Next.js. I'm not on the server components train just quite yet, because I started building this one that was still they said that it was ready, but really it wasn't. So I was seeing a bunch of stuff about that on Twitter. People are using it and they're having a bunch of weird issues with unclear error messages. So I decided, I'll hold off for now. It's all powered by TypeScript in the front end and the back end, so of course Node.js. And I host my Astro marketing website on Netlify, which is a free platform, and I'm okay with the risk of them pulling away with the free tier because I can host a website anywhere else. So there's another tool that I would like to talk to you about, and that's called Prisma. That's like a database ORM. And this is a sponsored segment. Without them, I couldn't be here. They are helping me out with some of my travel costs. Again, I came here from Europe, so flight was expensive, so I'm doing this to offset some of that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here to speak to you today. So I'm using Neon to host a Postgres database, and I'm using Prisma Pulse, which is one of their new products, to like listen for changes in that database. So it's kind of like it's really cool. Like it's kind of like an event that they give you where you can listen to on your database. Like they replicate your database, and then you can listen for events on like certain tables, for example. So I made, again, I'm using Neon for the database. So I made like this schema for like a feedback form, and this is like their schema syntax. Like it's kind of similar to GraphQL, but not exactly. But this is like how you describe your database table. So you have like your user, and they have a bunch of things like email and username, and then the users can have pieces of feedback that they share with you. So there, as it on the right, you see a feedback model, and that like feedback has an evaluation, which could be like a string, like positive, negative, neutral, whatever, and some content, like to give you more context of their feedback. So here is okay, it starts playing. So I made this demo where I have this Discord channel where I made a webhook integration that's connected to Prisma Pulse. So I used Kent's Epic stack, by the way, for this. That's really cool. So I've like added this like small feedback form, and I can like click on the thumbs up or thumbs down, and like give it some feedback, like, hey, this is really epic, and submit the form. And this does some stuff in the background, like of course it puts it in my database, and here I show it in the console, like because I was running this on localhost. So you get like this stream of new events every time something is changed in that specific database table that you're listening for, and you get the content that was sent to that table. So, and that triggers, here we're first gonna look at how it's integrated. So you have like your Prisma client that you make, and all you do is like add an adapter for it, and you extend it with Pulse, and you have a separate API key for that. So, and then I have this Prisma feedback stream function that I made, and that just listens for the events. Like there's a stream that, like this is how you listen for the events. You get a stream, and then you can await the events of the stream. And every time something is created, you get some content and evaluation. And again, because it's based on TypeScript and with CodeGen, you don't have to like add any types here because it's based on your schema. And every time I get a new event, you get a Discord message, and then here in the channel, you get a notification every time like someone gives you some feedback. So if you're like a Discord user, that's really nice. You don't have to like add something to your whole app or whatever. So I thought that was something I just wanted to try. I've never like done a Discord bot or integration or anything. So that's cool. And yeah, this is all powered by Prisma Pulse. Thanks to Prisma again for allowing me to be here, otherwise I really couldn't be. So again, you get this link at the end as well, which is like a Notion document with all the links, so you feel free to open it now, but if you don't get it, if I move on too quickly, then you can find it all at the end. So, of course, you should just copy everything that I did, right? Well, probably not. You can build products with any tech stack, really, and the biggest considerations, in my opinion, for your tech stack are you comfortable with those technologies, and will it help you achieve what you want? Maybe your goal is to learn specific technologies, then sure, go ahead, like learn a bunch of new stuff. But if your goal is, I just want to build a cool application really quickly, then it's probably best to lean on what you know. So one amazing tech stack that I personally have no experience with is PHP based. It's Laravel. I've never built anything with it, but on Twitter and like from other people, I hear that it's like amazing, and it gives you like 1,001 things out of the box, and you don't have to rely on like dozens of API services to like create your whole app. You get a lot of stuff out of the box. So personally, I'm interested in trying that sometime. Then another example is the Epic stack that you can use by Kent C. Dodds, which is based on React, powered by Remix as a framework on top of React with TypeScript on both the front end and the back end. So that's kind of nice, right? Like I said, I played around with this for my Prisma demo, and I think it's really great. A recent one that is just released that I saw is this like SaaS starter kit based on Next.js instead of Remix if you're more a fan of the Next. And this is a free GitHub repo by this YouTuber called WebDevCody. He didn't know that I was gonna like promote this here, but it's a free product. Like you can use this for free, and all he like asks, like, oh, if you wanna like have a video walkthrough, yeah, like you can give him like $25 or whatever, and he'll give you like a course on how to use it. And I haven't used this myself, but I've seen like enough of his videos where I can safely recommend something like this. If you're like, he's really into like, okay, keep it simple, you know, he's probably hosting his Next.js app on like a VPS or whatever instead of like a bunch of like serverless stuff to like overcomplicate your app. I like his takes a lot, so can easily recommend that. Another really important thing is involving your users. So, because of course, without users, you don't really have a SaaS, you don't have a business, you have a hobby project, which is cool as well. But if that's not what you intend to do, then you need to have some users. And these are some cool people that gave me feedback for Block Recorder, just needed to put something on the slide. So I also have this Discord channel for like all my paying customers, where they can give me some feedback on like, oh, hey, I'd really like to see this thing in your product. Can you please build it for me? And then I'll say, okay, cool, I'll go build it for you. And that works quite nice. Short feedback loop. So let's quickly go over some mindset things, because I don't want to like give you the expectation that, you know, you could just like, you know, have one idea and build it and then, you know, you'll be swimming in money. Ideally, that's how it would go, but it's not always the case. First thing is you will learn a lot. Like you probably have an idea for an app and you have a vague idea of how you'll build it, but you don't know all the details, I assure you. And depending on your background, it might be less that you'll have to learn or more. Like for a front-end developer like me, well, I used to be just a front-end developer and now more full stack at work. But still, I had to learn a bunch of new things, and that's fine. You know, we all have our own journeys. There's also burnout, which I personally went through as well. Just be careful. Like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You're doing, like, if you're like me, you don't have a big bag of VC funding, and you're doing this outside of your main job, maybe next to some other like responsibilities like family and all that. So, just like, if you're starting to feel the signs, just please slow down. It's okay to like launch a month or two later. It's totally cool. Just know that if you stick with it, even with some breaks in between, then you will get there. And eventually, you know, you'll have a finished product, and that's awesome. But don't underestimate it. It is really hard. Coming up with a product idea and then marketing it, and then, you know, maybe you'll earn some money from it. It's not easy. Like, if it was easy, then everyone would do it. Especially if you're doing it for the first time. Like, I honestly just got lucky that I had an idea that other people seem to like. And there's ways to like minimize that risk, like the wait list or like having people pre-purchase. But still, you know, it's kind of a like gamble to see like will it blow up or not. You know, over time it might, but right away probably not. So there's a good probability, like most SaaS applications, they actually earn a whopping $0 a month. So again, this includes a bunch of like really like small niche products that like probably like nobody asked for, and they just built it, and like, well, they didn't talk to anyone if they were interested in. Well, big surprise, nobody is interested and they earn nothing. That's, you know, it sucks, but it happens. And it's just, you know, even if you launch and it's like not a big splash, just remember, you know, it's not uncommon to like not earn millions of dollars like some of the people you see on social media. So there's also this other concern, you know, what if it fails? Like, that's something that I struggled with for a while, and I talked to people about it, but it's important to be optimistic. So personally, I ask myself, well, like, okay, what if it fails? What if it doesn't? Like, or what if it does? It's okay, you build something cool, you might like it yourself. If you're solving your own problem, then at least you have one happy user. So yeah, be optimistic, and try to solve a cool problem. So we already covered a lot, but again, let's specifically go over some things that you should absolutely not do in like 99% of cases, in my opinion. So again, don't overwork yourself. That's important. Uh, this is really key. Do not use your company laptop. I've heard people do this, and the company might they don't necessarily have to, but they could try to claim ownership of this thing that you spent nights and weekends building, and that would really suck. So please do not do this. This is like a critical mistake that could cost you all of your effort. Don't neglect your health. I personally am a poor example of this, so I'm just like giving this from me to you. Like, please don't stop exercising like I did after a while. Don't work every night and every weekend for like weeks in a row. It just sucks. Don't do it. Don't expect a big bang launch. I am a bit over time, so I hope you'll bear with me. There's a few more slides. So how is my SaaS doing right now? Well, it's about 6 weeks in, and I have 148 signups. I have 9 happy paying customers, and it's doing about $126 a month now. So again, I am really happy with this. Really. I think it's great, but like some people like on social media might give you the impression that, oh, if you just build a cool product and like go on Product Hunt or whatever and like, oh, bam, you're a millionaire now. No, that's not how it works, unfortunately, as you can tell. But slow and steady, you'll get there if you just like make a cool product, have a few paying customers, and like all you need to do is just keep growing the user base if it's subscription based, because people will stick around. You won't have to like keep finding new customers every month, which is also key if you're again doing it on the side, because you won't have time to like go do sales all the time, because you also need to work on the app. So having recurring revenue is also really cool. So what should you do? There's this like the list of takeaways from the talk. So let's quickly go over them again. So you can put yourself in the right situations to learn. So that's what I did when I stopped, like quit some jobs and got some other jobs. Be focused, avoid doing too many things at the same time. And you can honestly do it, even if you don't know how to do it yet. There's a lot you will learn, and that's totally okay. If you're relying on free products, please have a backup plan, because it might cost you like some sleep. It did for me, unfortunately.